Hey, it's Matt from MatthewGronsky.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. What does choir rehearsal look like in the 2020 to 21 school year? That's exactly the question that we're going to attempt to tackle in this video. More specifically, we're going to take a look at a recent committee report that was released by NYSSMA. NYSSMA is the New York State School Music Association, and in this report they outlined several different guidelines and recommendations for music ensembles moving forward. Specifically though, in this video, I would like to take a look at the recommendations for choir and to hopefully facilitate a little bit of a conversation as to what choir rehearsal might really look like next school year. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Matthew Gronsky. I am a music teacher from Long Island, New York. I've been teaching for over 10 years. I teach middle school and high school choir. I also direct my church's adult choir as well. And I think that this is such an important topic that music teachers need to be talking about more and more. It's such an important video. I'm even wearing my special music teacher polo that was gifted to me by one of my students. Anyway, moving along, let's take a look at this report. And again, this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the link to this specific report in the you know what, I'll leave it in the comments and in the description to this video in case you'd like to follow along. But when it comes to the specific choir recommendations, there's 4 different questions that are outlined, and we're just going to dive right in. Here's the first question. How should my rehearsal room be set up for instruction? This is a pivotal question, right? How should we be setting up our room for instruction come September, or if you're watching in another state, you know, come August, I guess. Sing in very large rooms. Sing in very large rooms. Now, this is, of course, I feel like this is the joke among teachers in general, which is space is already limited. Class size are already, you know, huge, especially for music ensembles, especially for you know, choirs in particular. I know at least in the middle school, you know, we've had sections of choir that have been, you know, around 90 students. And yes, we are rehearsing in larger spaces, but the reality is that may not be possible. But at least the intention is to sing in very large rooms, you know, take advantage of, you know, maybe your school happens to have an auditorium that is open, you know, for use. That might be a great route to take. You know, yeah, exactly. Consider rehearsing in the auditorium. I don't know if we all have beautiful auditoriums like that, but, you know, take advantage of that space. You know, I think in most schools, they reserve auditorium for, you know, assemblies or, you know, theater productions. But if it's free during the school day, that might be a great place for choirs to rehearse. They also recommended that students should be appropriately distanced. And this is, you know, common knowledge, I think, to most people who are at least paying attention to the news. You know, whether that's, you know, the intention of a large space is that it enables you to spread out your students across that space. And this is an interesting point. Consider splitting your choir into smaller sections. Now, this is just naturally going to be limited by your school schedule. I know my at least the schedule at the middle school where I teach, the schedule is such that the music ensembles often are kind of, what's the word? They reflect the gym schedule because we have these large class sizes. And I don't know that they're still trying to brainstorm what the plan is moving forward. Odds are there's probably going to be some kind of hybrid, you know, online learning with in-class learning. But this is a easier said than done, you know, to split your choir into smaller sections. It's really kind of dependent on the structure of your school schedule. In any case, that is a recommendation. Let's go here to the next question here, the second out of 4 questions. Are there alternatives to sharing music? Now, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. This is tough, and this is a conversation maybe for another video for choir directors. But this is just heavy hitting news. So let's just dive right in. No sharing music. No sharing music. Now, I know it's been my practice to share music as much as possible, and to be honest, I've routinely done that with my ensembles to make the most of the budget that we have for purchasing sheet music, and we can go down a whole road of where maybe choir directors in general can do a better job at, allocating those or using those funds properly, and avoid, of course, photocopying music. At least speaking to me personally, one of the ways that I have, and it's kind of led me even to this video right now, I love creating and composing music, and part of the advantage, or part of the reason I ended up doing that, was to stretch my school's budget. There was only so much money that we had to purchase sheet music. So I was like, let me just compose my own music, and then I could, make as many copies as I need to. But we're going to have to think a little creative here, because this is a very difficult, point, maybe for a lot of us, no sharing music. Now, of course, the reason I'm sure behind that, which we'll get into in the next question, you don't want to share music because of the social distancing. If we're talking about at least 6 feet apart, you can't really share music from that far. Let's go into the next point. Consider purchasing additional copies. Again, easier said than done. This is probably, I think, this might be one of the most difficult points that we're really gonna have to think, creatively about. And I was surprised. I think it's this point. Yeah, project music onto a large screen. Now, I am not. This is not legal advice by any means, but I do know that projecting music onto a large screen is kind of complicated when it comes to copyright law, and I know that many publishers have been very understanding come online learning, as long as you have purchased. I think most, if not all publishers have, a lot of publishers have said, as long as you've purchased enough copies to cover the students in your room, you can use them online in some form. It gets a little touchy, and I'm just gonna say it. I'm no expert when it comes to this, but this is one of the recommendations from the New York State School Music Association, is to project music onto a large screen. And let's keep going here. Last point. Each singer should take materials with them, and this is something. And again, why I'm sharing this, and I hope that this video is informative to those of you who are watching. This is something that I personally never thought about. We at least the practice with my middle school and high school choirs is they have choir folders that are stored in the classroom. And I have 2 different sections of the 8th grade course that I teach, and they have an assigned folder, which they take and they return. Well, obviously the issue with that is to limit any kind of, germs, I guess, being, transmitted through these folders. And the idea is that every student would have their own, their own sheet music. Again, easier said than done. Think about the math behind this. Again, one of the things that has worked for me is purchasing, copies of music relative to the number of students that I would teach at one time. And this kind of complicates it. And again, I think this is one of those things that we're going to have to think outside of the box when it comes to this. And also, personally, one of the things that I'm thinking about doing, on my website, MatthewGronsky.com, I have all of my music that is 100% reproducible. So once you purchase it, you can make as many photocopies as possible, or as many photocopies as you need, of course. And I think that might be a step forward. In fact, I'm just trying to think outside the box as a music teacher, as a composer also. And I think what I'm going to do is over the next couple weeks, I'm probably going to put up XML files to some of my compositions. I don't know of any composers that have done this, but I think in this unique time that we're living in, this is just maybe a step forward. And for those of you who don't know, an XML file is a file that you can import into any music notation software and then edit the arrangement. And I know when it comes to composers and publishers and copyright, these things get touchy, but I 100% own the rights to my music. And I think this is a great way maybe to help other, choir directors, because, especially as middle school and high school, but especially with those middle school changing voices, sometimes you find an arrangement and you're like, ah, man, just this one section, I wish I can kind of change the notes here. And I'm just saying this right now. Again, over the next few weeks, I'm going to put up XML files for purchase. That will be included with that the rights to my sheet music. Hopefully to kind of alleviate some of these concerns. But let's keep going here to the third question, third out of 4 questions, and this is a big one. What are possible strategies to reduce the spread of droplets and aerosols during choral rehearsals? Okay. This and before we dive into these points, this is mentioned in other places of the article, which is again is linked below this video. But of course, they recommend that you follow your school or state guideline for mask wearing. So this is not listed in these recommendations. That's already implied. So what are these strategies? Strategic placement of singers. Again, talking about social distancing. Also thinking outside the box. Maybe there's a vent in the room. Maybe you don't want to place your singers right by that vent. That might propel those aerosols, right? So we need to be strategic in how we're just placing our singers around the classroom, not just not just placing them to ensure social distancing. Instructional strategies that limit concurrent singing. Okay, so we want instructional strategies that limit too many singers singing at the same time. I know that sounds crazy, but let's be practical here again, right? If your school building schedule kind of limits you splitting up your ensemble into too many sections, then maybe this is kind of something that's just going to naturally have to happen in the rehearsal, where you only have one section rehearsing at a time. Or of course, and this wasn't listed as one of the strategies, but if your school is okay with it and the weather is fine, maybe rehearsing outdoors might be another way to kind of make this work. Use humming when possible. I don't want to give anything away, but there's I have some ideas along these lines, and I'm just going to leave that vague. But hopefully something in the future on my website will appear along these lines. But that's an interesting idea. Humming is obviously going to limit the aerosols because you're not opening up your mouth, not projecting that as much. And then use student leaders for small group instruction. I love this recommendation. I use this quite frequently with my high school choir. And I love this because it puts the responsibility in the hands of the students. And I've seen time and time again, the students, they love that. They love stepping up to the plate, especially in difficult circumstances, in challenging circumstances, which is what we're in. So if your room, wherever you're rehearsing, it permits this, this is a great way to go. And the final question: what other musical activities related to choral singing are possible in a rehearsal setting? What other musical activities related to choral singing are possible in a rehearsal setting? And again, I think the idea here is, again, to limit singing as much as possible, even though this is a choral rehearsal. And you know what? Let me just talk a little bit more about this more specifically. I think, and this is all conjecture, even this committee report, all of these things are in flux, right? No one has the answers to these things. And it's, we're going to kind of have to teach on our tippy toes, being ready to change at any moment. But my at least, this is just me personally, just, tossing some ideas out there. I'm expecting that by and large, the first months or so are, at least in my class, are going to be more of a music theory based class. And that's kind of what I do in general. I focus on not just vocal technique, but also I teach a lot of music theory right out of the gate, just to to improve musical literacy. If we're going to be reading and singing through music at middle school and high school level, that's usually where I start. And I think I just might extend that period until, God willing, cases drop, things relax, and in the best case scenario, maybe even by concert time, we'll be ready. I don't know. Again, all of this is up for grabs, but I do think it's probably a good idea to kind of prepare for more of a general music / music theory based choral rehearsal. And I know that's not the answer that we want to hear, but that might be, for a lot of us, that might be the safest answer. But let's see some ideas here. Skill building activities. Again, we're talking about music theory, not just vocal technique, but things that are, building their music skills. Maybe you want to do a rhythm unit. Again, let's think outside the box here. There's a lot of possibilities here. Project-based learning, and I like this one specifically. For those of you who don't know, I created a program called 70-Second Solfege, and I'm so thankful that so many choir directors have used this specifically for online learning, where they can upload an example directly to Google Classroom and have students complete these basically projects. That's been really great. And I'm hoping to continue that, assuming that there's a good chance that, at least in my school district, there might be some form of hybrid learning where I don't know if they're going to rotate the schedule or the day. Maybe we're in class teaching one day, at home for online learning the other day. But having some kind of a project-based learning is a great approach to take. So if you haven't checked out 70-Second Solfege, check it out. It's really a great program. And what else? Guided and critical listening activities. I love this. This is probably one of my favorite non-singing activities to do with my choirs. Is I do a lot of critical listening activities where I will play recording of a particular ensemble, have them write and reflect on it. And you know what? Especially even with my middle schoolers, especially with my middle schoolers, sometimes they are super critical to everything that they're listening to. It's a great activity. But my favorite is probably to do melodic dictation with my students. And there's just so much going on. And I know I personally didn't really do melodic dictation till I was in high school, or the later years of high school. But I think it is a fantastic learning tool. Play a basic solfege pattern on the piano and have students actually write it down. You don't have to worry about aerosols going off, and it's improving so many important parts of their musicality. So yeah, definitely consider that. And for the final point here, compose and create. And I'm at 100% behind this as a composer and a digital resource creator personally, but also for our students. I believe we're created to create, and this is a fantastic learning tool for our students, is to actually have them compose their own melodies. And especially if we're talking about online learning, there's just so many ways to combine these different recommendations. Now, again, this is just from the New York State School Music Association, and I'm sure this is going to vary from state to state, from school district to school district, public to private. There's so much nuance to this conversation. But I hope that this was informative for you. And if you're, starting to think about next school year and wondering, like, man, how am I going to prepare? What are some maybe some digital resources that I can create for my choir moving forward? I would just recommend humbly, it's actually a course that's available on jwpepper.com, as well as my website. It's the Music Tech Mastery online course. I will link to that in the description below. And even before you check that out, maybe you want to check out, I also have a free webinar kind of going through these things. But the Music Tech Mastery online course, it goes through 10 different resources that you can create for your ensemble. And it walks you through how to create these 10 resources that I think will probably help a lot of music teachers. In fact, it already is. I think like 75% of the students who are taking this when I say students, I mean other music teachers who are taking this course, 75% of them have said it has been the most helpful resource for them this school year. So definitely check that out. And also, I have a bunch of free choir resources as well on my website. So again, I hope this was informative. And if you want to, maybe even comment below, just so we can kind of facilitate more of a discussion amongst choir directors, I think that would be really great. Comment below. Let's toss ideas back and forth. Let's think ahead. And you know what? Let's think outside the box. Let's be creative in conquering this next school year. I'm Matthew Goronsky from MatthewGoronsky.com. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you.